How are you?
Doing well, thank you. How's your day going?
It's good, man. It's good. Thanks for asking. How about yours?
Pretty good, thank you. Congratulations for pro crypto election in US.
Yes, yes, yes. Definitely crazy times ahead.
I want to go back and start your career path from the beginning. What drew you to software engineering and eventually to Web3 space?
For sure. Yeah. Um, so I think, when I was in college, was always kind of interested in the software engineering kind of space. Initially from more like the finance economics perspective, studied like, econ and finance in school. And when I was at USC, like where I went to university, there was like a minor in web application technology that I decided to kind of like sign up for. Um, had always kind of growing up in New York, had always kind of planned to work in finance because, that's what a lot of my family does. And that's, what I thought was quite interesting. And, later, like second half of my college journey had, started doing internships in finance and had also started doing this minor in kind of web app technologies. And after doing my finance internships, realized that like finance wasn't that exciting or interesting to me, and had really started enjoying, yeah, like software engineering and tech more specifically and entrepreneurship. And so basically decided, as I was like graduating college like last year, that I didn't really want to do finance anymore and that I wanted to like make a career in software engineering. I was also like really attracted to people like Peter Levels and like Digital Nomad and that whole kind of lifestyle. And so in my final year of college, ended up founding a like commercial real estate data analytics startup with a few friends. Um, and that was kind of like how I like really started like getting good at software engineering, learning how to build something from the ground up, and then from there, kind of worked on that real estate startup for like the final year of college, and about 1.5 years after college. Had always also been interested in crypto during my college years, but like bought some Bitcoin and kind of forgot about it, and then bought some Ethereum and kind of forgot about it. Um, and yeah, was working on this real estate startup and started getting into like crypto subreddits, and started reading more. I think it was right around like late 2016, early 2017. It was like the ICO boom. Lots of stuff was happening in the Ethereum ecosystem. And the main reason that I got into it at the start was because I had this like Ethereum sitting on my Coinbase or wherever it was at the time, and it like kept going up in value. And I was like, oh, like I should maybe learn about this since I'm making all this money from it. And then from there, kind of just like fell down the rabbit hole, started investing in ICO, started learning about, dApp development and kind of like blockchain software engineering stuff. And yeah, like just got very, very obsessed very quickly. And then from there, ended up joining like an early stage startup called Radar Relay, which was like a decentralized exchange built on the 0x protocol. And worked there for about 6 months before kind of joining Consensus, where I still am today for the last 6.5 years.
Wow, and what about Sushi Swap?
So back in like 2021, I think it was, I was just like, again, super into crypto, like really into the decentralized finance space due to the things that I was working on at Consensus at the time. Like I wasn't really scratching that itch for like learning more about DeFi and getting more involved in DeFi. And so I started doing some kind of like moonlight contract work for Sushi and ended up doing that for, close to a year. I actually almost left Consensus for Sushi Swap. And actually ended up deciding not to, which in retrospect I think was a good decision.
Well, yeah, for sure. When we started to know each other and work with each other, you already been in consensus, right? You already started your career there. It was end of 2021, I believe. Or yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So I joined Consensus in May of 2018. So yeah, I had been a Consensus at it for a few years at that point. And I think that was like when we met, it was like when I was doing some kind of contract work on the side for sushi.
could you walk us through like your journey at Consensus from a senior engineer to engineering manager and how you, aside of that, how you manage to keep your work-life balance? Because like for engineers, it's another thing, right?
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so like joining Consensus kind of started as, like a mid-level full stack engineer and, just through hard work and just being in the right place at the right time, ended up kind of like moving up to senior and then was, a senior engineer at Consensus for a while. And so yeah, my manager kind of came to me and was like, "Would you be interested in moving into engineering management?" And it was always something that I was interested in, just because I think it aligns well with my strengths. And so kind of started doing that, and that was close to 3 years ago now, and have really enjoyed doing that, and then kind of just connecting teams and making sure that engineers are satisfied with the work and are able to be unblocked and move.
By the way, we spoke about engineering happiness, and I remember about Stack Overflow recent survey where it turns out that like 60 something percent of developers are very unhappy, and the biggest cause of it is the technical debt. What are your thoughts about it? Have you ever like had such a case while working with different teams?
Yes, for sure. I mean, I feel like I'd be lying if I said no. Yeah, I mean, I think technical debt is a real problem, and I think that it really starts to bother, like, engineers when, like, they're not able to move as quickly as they want to in, like, feature delivery or, whatever it is because of technical debt. Um, and I think it's always a balance, right? Because, no matter what, you're going to accrue technical debt, and I think in some cases, obviously, accruing technical debt in a smart way is the right move, but I also think that, sometimes you have to face the facts and, if it makes sense, pay it down, and that may mean kind of like slowing feature delivery or new product launches or whatever it is.
Yeah. So basically, it's still a problem even for like a giant company as a consensus.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, even more so for the larger the company is, it typically means are older, code bases are bigger. There's been more years of just accrual of technical debt. So yeah, I mean, I think in my experience, just having seen quite a few different code bases and organizations, I think it's typically the larger companies and the older companies that's more with technical debt. Because if it's like you're a brand new startup and your code base is 6 months old, if you have like a lot of technical debt, that seems like a bit of a red flag to me. But like if you're a 10-year-old company, and it like massive code base, then, it's, I think, just natural that, there's going to
Yeah,
be a decent amount of
most of
debt.
the time, even the technical debt coming not from the engineering, like not done by purposely. It's because of the management. Most of the time, right? Especially for startups.
Yeah, I mean, yes, yes. I mean, I think, yeah, if there's lots of like changing scope and requirements, that's like a surefire way to accrue technical debt. If you're like trying, like you're always in the mode of like rushing features out, that's obviously going to accrue technical debt. I am like a big believer in, uh, like make it work, uh, make it right, make it fast as like a kind of like core, software engineering principle. And it's like, if you're only able to do like the first step, like make it work, and then you never are like, allowing cycles for like make it right and make it fast. I think that that's, a big issue on like an organizational level and something that, is a surefire way to just like accrue tech debt
Mhm.
much faster than
By the way, we spoke about like in the software engineering principles. Got another question in my head. So basically, you started your career as a self-taught engineer.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for sure. Like, I think, in my college courses, like, learned, you know, fundamentals of like web development, basically, JavaScript, PHP, that good stuff, a little bit of React. And, had built a few kind of like small school projects and also took like some of the fundamental like CS courses, like, data structures and algorithms. But I think most software engineers, because like, the stuff that you learn in a college course is so different than like practical applied software engineering. Like typically in like a university course, you're going to learn like C++ plus plus or maybe Java, data structures and algorithms, very kind of like theoretical stuff, and not so much the practical side. And so I think even, you know, developers that have like, full CS kind of undergraduate degrees, like end up kind of being self-taught as well, because it's like a lot of people aren't learning React or like how to build, high performance, scalable backend
Right.
in a
Is
college
that
course.
one of the reasons that like motivate you to become a mentor and told high school students about the blockchain technology?
Um, yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's always nice to like pay it back, and, like, I was lucky enough to have people that, like, helped guide me on my career in the early years and, like, teach me about software engineering and blockchains and help me make connections, and so, um, I think doing stuff like that is always, like, just good karma, good way to pay it back and, help, the future generations, younger people kind of, like, achieve their goals like I was able to
Yeah, I
achieve mine.
totally agree with you. I mean, from my side, I'm fully self-taught, basically. My first bachelor degree is in marketing, then on master's I did,
Oh,
yeah,
really? I didn't know that.
first bachelor degree is on marketing, then I did a small master about the public relations. But at the same time, while I was learning in the university, the bachelor stuff, I started to learn a whole development. I started like from front end, then get back to algorithms and data structures and move to JavaScript. And I was like kind of keeping both of the sides, and it helps me a lot right now for doing like an entrepreneur stuff also, because you have clear understanding what you're building and how to sell it for the investors and for the customers. And yeah, I had the similar mentality to pay it back by teaching others, helping others. Basically, it's a very good karma, as you said.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, honestly, like, I am not a big believer in, like, people needing CS degrees to be good at, like, our career. Like, I've worked with so many, like, both people with, you know, undergraduate degrees in CS and self-taught developers or people that went through boot camps or other kind of, like, alternative methods of learning, and I see very little to no difference in terms of, like, how good and productive these people can be. And I think in a lot of ways, like it's, I always really appreciate people that come from non-traditional backgrounds, maybe partially because I also come from a slightly non-traditional background. And I also like definitely believe in like the like generalist principles, like people that are like good or like have knowledge about a lot of different subject areas. At least for blockchain, like I've worked with a lot of people that came from like self-taught economics or finance backgrounds into crypto and blockchain. Um, and I think those skills are so useful, like being able to like reason about you know, financial markets, financial products. Since, crypto, a lot of it is very finance oriented. That kind of background is really helpful.
By the way, speaking about blockchain technology from development perspective, right now, like when the blockchain hype started, there was some sort of shift between separate routes of engineering to full stack. most of the time people are looking for full stack development, which includes both front end, back end, and blockchain, which is either like Solidity or Solana or any other blockchain techniques. What are your thoughts about it? Because when you got too many things, it's becoming obvious that you're not good at one, but you have like sort of understanding about everything in a mid level.
For sure. I mean, I think full stack engineers is the model that I really like. I think even with full stacks, you often have people like specializing in one area of the stack. Like maybe you're a full stack engineer, but you lean front end or you lean back end. I mean, I think it's often that full stack engineers tend to lean more front end. Um, but I think, it's okay if you're not an expert at everything. I think if you are working on a project or in a team that's trying to deliver something, there's always ways to like upskill yourself and the team. And so I think, yeah, obviously it is a lot to learn. And often like, in my own experience when hiring full stack engineers, I don't need them to be like an expert in everything, just like have some fundamental knowledge of the basics of all of the different areas so that like if we do need them, if it's a full stack engineer and they typically have worked on front end, but this new project has a big kind of like solidity component, I want to be confident that they have enough fundamentals that they can get spun up quickly and become like more of an expert in the area that we need them to. Because like I think it's easier to work with people that are flexible and able to learn quickly. And I think as a full stack engineer, like that's a very essential skill is to be able to learn quickly. Like even just front end alone changes so quickly. New React versions, Next.js, server side rendering. And so, each project is going to look different. Even if it's a team of 4 people, like they might be super focused on the front end for one project, but then it's like a lot of back end work and solidity work for the other. And so, like, having a team that is able to kind of like self organize and swarm on different areas of the stack, I think is extremely useful.
And what about location? Like, starting from your part, like when you started to jump on this hype train of blockchain, you've been in US, right? You've been in New York.
Yes. I started in the US when I like started off my career. And these days, I mean, even in my early days, as I was saying before, like was always interested in like remote work and digital nomadism. And so that was one of the things that really attracted me to Consensus. Like it was a remote company back in 2016, 2017, when like very, very few companies were fully remote. Um, and so yeah, like, have based out of New York for like basically the entirety of my career, but have been able to kind of like move around.
And what about now? Do you still keeping this remote mode or you become more hybrid or on-site only?
So we're still fully remote. Absolutely no plans to change that. I think one of the things that we have learned over the last almost 10 years of being a remote first company is that it helps if teams are geographically co-located in the sense that like, I've worked on teams with like people on 3 or 4 different continents. And at a certain point, it gets a little bit hard to, work effectively and manage a team in that scenario. Just because, like if one team member to the other has like a 10-hour time difference, it gets really hard to like plan any sort of like synchronous ceremonies or meetings that you want to do. And obviously, like I'm a big fan of async work and collaboration. Um, but I don't think that I don't think it's as effective to only work asynchronously. And like in these cases where the difference is so large, either like one person's kind of work hours have to suffer, or you have to have like a fully asynchronous model, which I don't think is like the right way. So like what we do at like MetaMask, for example, is Yeah, so we have like 3 to 4 core working hours a day. You're basically like, that's when stand-up meetings will fall or grooming meetings. Um, and, like, it's not that you have to be on meetings all the time or like constantly on Slack in those hours, but it's just that like the expectation is that you're available in case, there's stand-ups
Yep.
or like an ad hoc design meeting or whatever it is. And then, the rest of the day, it's like if you like to work between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., like I don't really mind. It's really like the rest of the day you can structure it however you like. It's just that like if there's meetings or things that we need to like do synchronously at that time, you're available for that.
Yeah, but still the problem is not a problem, but the preferred time zones are either US most of the time for the development teams, right? Either US or like in Europe, but they're preferred like to be like couple of hour, like minimum hour of difference between like US based team and the Europe team.
Yeah, I would say generally that's the case. Just because like most of the core like of all of our engineering teams is in the US. But like some teams do have like a European core. Like a lot of teams within Linnea, for example, are like heavily based out of like France and Germany. And so obviously for those kind of teams, like it might not, they probably wouldn't want to hire someone from, West Coast US. I mean, even East Coast US, it's a little bit challenging, but probably doable. And then they can kind of go farther west into like Europe or like Eastern Asia or Western Asia.
Yeah. Yeah. Why I started to ask it because yeah, we had a case. I mean, even me, I applied for the consensus, and not only consensus, but like I did a small survey in Middle East, and turns out that's a big issue for a lot of developers. Not only related for the consensus, but overall, if someone want to work with the big tech companies, most of the time those companies are preferred either West Europe or US only. And they're not even talking about the other part of the world. And doesn't matter your skills, doesn't matter everything. It's just that like company is based there and we want someone to be there.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've to be fair, I've only worked with a few, like Middle East specifically. I've only worked with a few team members based out of Dubai. And I think one of the other things with like, like the UAE and like surrounding areas specifically is that, or at least something that I noticed that like made it even more challenging is that like a lot of people in the Muslim world, because they take Friday off and, like, work Sunday, it creates, like, an even more like, you have a whole day basically where you lose them basically, and so I found that, like, another kind of challenge for working with people in, like, the UAE and surrounding areas.
Even for the Christian countries.
Yeah, I don't know, honestly. I just remember, like, I it was, like, the first time I had worked with someone that was based out of Dubai, and I, like, kept noticing that he was, like, out of office. Like, he was already in consensus, and he joined our team for a few months, and I kept noticing that, like, he wasn't around on Fridays, and then I, like, realized I was like, "Oh, it's because he works like, he takes Friday and Saturday off and not Saturday and Sunday off, like,
Oh wow.
most of the world." And so, yeah, that was new.
I never heard about such case that they're not working on
Really?
Fridays. Yeah.
I think it like, I was asking a few people, and apparently it's pretty common, in, like, the UAE. I mean, you would know better than me. I've never been to Dubai, and you spend a lot of time there, I know. So maybe I don't know, maybe I just got bad information.
Maybe it's for locals because I don't have that much connections with locals in engineering, but I know that from March, it's about like 3 4 weeks that they had. I don't remember it. Oh gosh, it's so embarrassing. They had national tradition that they're like spending not working. They're working from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. Then they're taking off until 9 or 10 p.m. and they're working from 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. or something
Oh,
like
wow,
this.
okay.
Yeah, and there's then
There's something like
yeah, it's
that.
called Ramadan. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. and they're doing fasting also, so they're not eating at all the whole day, only after the sunset.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think that plus, like, just, like, some cultural differences and the time zone differences, like, make it more challenging. But to be fair, like, there's so much tech, entrepreneurship, crypto activity in Dubai and, like, the UAE that, like, I feel like, like, Dubai wasn't such a big hub 10, 15, 20 years ago, and I think it's like these companies take a while to, like, set up regional hubs and, like, prioritize these regions more, and so, like, I think in, like, 5 to 10 years, like, this difficulty of, like, hiring people in these regions will be much less.
Yeah, I mean, it will be very interesting 2025 for UAE because we had like they got new regulatory systems where banks and traditional banks will start to accept crypto and people can pay salaries with crypto. They already did a lot of integration. I mean, you can pay your bills using crypto right now in Dubai. Yeah, from banking applications. So that's the whole point. You're just depositing crypto through banking applications or like mobile applications, and you're just paying your bills immediately. Of course, like it when it comes to service fee, it's a hell because they're like taking $5 service fee every time for every transaction. It's like the minimum stuff, what I've experienced, but maybe in the future they will do something with it. But for now, they're doing a lot of stuff to like become as crypto friendly as possible.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I definitely have seen that, and I mean, like, I feel like 5 years ago, like, I would never have considered Dubai necessarily, like, a big crypto hub, but, like, now I feel like, New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Dubai, like, these are, like, some of the kinda, like, preeminent crypto hubs worldwide. So,
But
obviously, their strategy the government strategy is paying off there.
yeah, by the way, when you're going, I know you're working also from Ireland, right? You're
Yes.
traveling most of the time. In when it comes to US, you're working from New York office or from San Francisco office?
So we don't I mean, we have a small office in New York. I haven't been into the office in about 2 years, I would say, if not more. I used to go a lot more, and it was much more of like a hub, like in the earlier days, like maybe 2018 to 2020. But like once COVID happened, like we had more offices. Like we even had an office in Dublin. We used to have pretty large kind of employee base in Dublin. Offices in Paris, London, San Francisco, and probably like I think maybe even Dubai for a short bit. And once COVID hit, like we closed pretty much all of the offices. Like Dublin office is now closed. I think San Francisco we have like a very small WeWork. London, it's the same small WeWork. And I think yeah, like those are really the only offices that the permanent offices. I think also in Texas we now have a small WeWork as well. But yeah, I mean, I think there's just much less focus on there was never a large focus at Consensus and like being in the office. But now post COVID, it's even less.
But when you're traveling between the US and Ireland, what's your base state or city where you're staying?
I still have like an apartment in the US. And like the reason that I'm splitting time between New York and Ireland is because my partner got like a job over here. And so she had to move over to Ireland because she's like in a hybrid role. So she's in the office like a couple days a week. And so she has an apartment in Dublin, which is where I am right now. And this is my base when I'm in Ireland.
Oh, I see. By the way, how do you keep like your passion alive in an industry like this where changes are happening so rapidly?
Yeah, I mean it's a good question. I mean, I think like I've always just like really been attracted to kind of like the long-term vision of crypto, which is like disintermediating financial markets, improving efficiency, decentralizing trust, or like removing kind of like the need to trust an institution or a middleman to do things. And so sometimes it's hard, like there's definitely been times in my crypto journey where I feel like it's all just like casino meme coin nonsense. But I think you just have to kind of keep your head down and remember the ideals. And I think like, days like, the last week has been like very a nice feeling, not so much because of Trump getting elected, but more because like you saw the rise of Polymarket, and like Polymarket was one of the main news sources that like so many people were using in this, and like also like predicted the election correctly, and like the data in Polymarket was like way faster to update, and like Polymarket basically called the election before any of the mainstream CNN, Fox, AP News. Like Polymarket was first, and so being able to like see crypto have that like effect on the real world, and like kind of like not be just like a digital casino is always, something that like, brings back faith that, like what you are working on and like the industry like can have positive impact on the world.
What's the most meaningful part for your work in Web3 that you're like really proud of?
I mean, I think just like working on MetaMask has definitely been like, one of the things that I'm most proud of, being kind of like one of, if not the most used crypto wallet. And like, we have users like all over the world, from the US, Nigeria, Turkey, Vietnam. And, like seeing people be able to kind of like take more control of their finances and their, ultimately their future, through kind of like the software that we build, is a really cool feeling.
Are you planning to do your own startup one day or your own company?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to. I mean, that's kind of like first job out of college, as I was saying earlier, was like my own startup that I co-founded with some friends. I've like came close to, or like experimented with, founding other startups, like, me and you meeting with some of the alter stuff. Um, also Tom, who you probably remember from the alter days, like almost kind of worked on him on his startup, Wallapay. So yeah, I mean, like startup life, entrepreneurship is always really interesting and exciting to me, and I would love to get back to that one day. I think for me, the blocker has always been that I haven't found like an idea that I'm like super passionate about, because like, having worked on your own startup before, like it is very hard, and there's going to be lots of tough times and just challenges to like founding a really successful company. And I just like, I know from my past experience that like you have to believe in what you're building like so much. And I just haven't yet found an idea or a project where like I've had that level of belief where I'm like, okay, I want to commit to this for the next 10 of my life, basically.
Even 10, not 5.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to go into it with the mindset of like 10 years. Like that's kind of my take, is that like, most startups like 5 years in, like, maybe you've done pretty well, you've raised the Series B or Series C, but like if you're talking about getting to an exit, I mean, obviously companies make it before 10 years, but like I think, if you looked at the average company, like they're at least 10 years old before they're getting to IPO or exit or anything like that. And so yeah, like I think 10 years is the right timeline that you have to think about.
Interesting. Very interesting. But we talked about early stage startups and multiple projects. And I got another question for you as an engineering manager with a very comprehensive and very successful engineering experience, I got a one question actually. How do you think, like, for developers, doesn't matter the level of development, like it can be medium, mid, senior, lead engineer, doesn't matter. What do you think? Is it a good idea actually to combine and do multiple completely different projects at a time, or to have like a side project or hobby projects where you're going to do after your main job, for example?
Yeah, I mean, I think like side projects are great. Like just as a developer, like learning how to build side projects, it's obviously, like going to improve your engineering skills. And like also, if you kind of get your side project off the ground, it forces you to learn more about like business development, marketing, like all the other stuff that, you know, it takes to get a product off the ground, which I think
Yeah.
is always full for engineers to know. Um, I think obviously, like, it does have an impact on your work-life balance, like, if you're signing off from your job and you have to kinda go to another job working on a side project, like, that's gonna impact your work-life balance, and so, like, I don't think it's sustainable forever, like, I don't like, I mean, you see developers that are, like, always working on side projects on top of, like, having a full job, and, like, I, to be honest, don't know how those people do it because, like, I like to work, but I also like to have, personal time and disconnect from the screen. But, I mean, as long as you find it sustainable and you're not burning yourself out, I think it's a great thing to do.
Mhm. How to manage to not get burned out
I mean, I think for everyone, it's different.
for you?
For me, I think some of the things that really help me are like having a really good routine every day. Like for me, it's, typically I like to like work for a few hours in the morning and then like go to the gym in the middle of the day. Do a good hard workout, maybe hit the sauna or something after. And I think like if I'm in that routine every day, day in, day out, it's hard for me to feel burnt out. I think even if I am doing that routine and I'm like staying up until 12 a.m. working every night, like I still think I would get burnt out. But like with that kind of routine in place, I can easily do like 10-hour days, 5 days a week and not kind of feel any kind of burnout effects. So I think, yeah, for me, keeping the routine is really important. Also just like stepping away and having like, time with friends or family, getting out into nature on the weekends is also really nice for me to kind of like help manage burnout. I'm just trying to think of any
Playing video games?
used to be. I like stopped playing video games, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years ago. I just, like, wasn't as interested as I was, but I definitely used to, like, use video games as an outlet. But I think it's really just, like, finding time to do things that, like, you care about and enjoy. And, like, if that's more working and, like, a side project, like, great, like, you have a superpower and, like, more power to you. And if it's going outside, going on hikes, seeing your family, seeing your friends, I think it's just ultimately what it boils down to is finding time to do things that you like and care about and just not making your whole life about work. And then I think there's also other things like if you're in a really stressful work environment, like that's obviously going to increase burnout. And so, ideally your manager or your lead would be making your like, work environment as stressless as possible. But in the absence of that, I think you also have to like figure out coping strategies to like reduce stress at work, whether that's like meditation or other techniques that like just allow you to kind of manage your stress levels better. That's why I really like saunas because I feel like, if I go into a sauna and like sweat for 20 minutes and take like a cold shower after, like my stress levels are like 75% reduced.
Oh yeah, for sure. Do like ice baths?
Yes, I also very much like cold plunges as well. It's hard to be stressed when you're like either burning hot, so cold or you're shivering.
Yeah, yeah. That's a true story. I truly agree with you. However, sometimes it won't fully help you. You still need to manage to either do something with your management or leave the company.
Exactly, yeah, I mean, like, if everything is not working, and you're not able to enjoy the things that you would normally enjoy, then I think that suggests that something is kinda just wrong with the environment in general and that you need to make, like, a larger change.
Mhm. Yeah. And by the way, when speaking about living and trying to find a new job with this type of things, most of the time, big companies always ask to your GitHub account. But the thing is that if you're working by using GitHub, for example, most of the time those organizations and those code bases are on a private repos. So, and if you're like a bit um, introvert person and you don't know what to create and you don't have this creative touch in you to just create something to fill up your GitHub will look very empty. What will be your suggestion to those type of developers who like work their whole life, like they spend 5 to 6 years, they have very good developers, but when people or HR team look back to their GitHub profile, it's just empty.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, in my personal experience, like, I mean, if a developer has, like, a super stacked GitHub and, like, has a bunch of projects that they've worked on that you can see their code, like, that's an added bonus, but, like, I feel like and, it seems like you might have had a different experience that, like, GitHub if your GitHub is empty, it doesn't matter that much. I think it's, like, you might have to, like basically, like, everybody every time you're getting hired, like, they want some sort of positive signal that you're a good engineer, right? And so, like, that a GitHub with, like, a bunch of, super starred projects and, like, really nice code and, creative, cool things can obviously, like, help kinda give that signal. Um but I don't think you'd, like, necessarily at a disadvantage if you don't have that as, like, a signal to give hiring managers. I think it's just that you're probably gonna have to make that positive signal up elsewhere. So, like, if there's, like, a coding interview or something, like, you're gonna have to show that you're strong there. Um, obviously, like, in your resume, you're gonna have to, like, speak very specifically to the things that you've worked on at the company. I also think, like, if it's possible, like, and you don't want like, you can't publish some of, like, the code that you've built on your GitHub, like, you might be able to, like, create, like, a simple portfolio website and show, like, demos or videos of products that you've worked on, and I think that that might be another good way to kind of, like, help show that positive signal.
Mhm. Speaking about the coding interviews, for the traditional, like let's say Web2 interview process is very straightforward in terms of technological questions, in terms of interview. Like most of the time, I did interviews myself. I've been in interviews and I did interviews, and like 9 out of 10 questions are straightforward. It's either about like JavaScript features and like 2 or 3 questions about CSS or front end knowledge. If you're like pointing to lead positions, your questions are more oriented about data structures, some DevOps and backend understanding, databases, and that's it. When it comes to Web3, let's like separate it. Let's talk about the blockchain interview that you did, for example, more like fully solidity oriented and like fully like more Web3 oriented, where the main understanding, the main point of this role was working with different SDKs or libraries. What are like top questions that you will ask, for example, the interviewer or during the interview?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, being someone that's gone through the tech interview process myself, like, I definitely don't really like it. I mean, I also, like, I've grinded on leak code before, and it's awful. And I think honestly, like, it's a big issue, and in my opinion, for like a lot of these like FANG companies that like their interviews are so leak code driven because it's like leak coding is like a skill in and of itself. And like, okay, obviously, if you're a good leak coder, you probably know data structures and algorithms pretty well. Um, but I think like for most of the jobs that they're hiring these people for, like, yeah, okay, data structures and algorithms like are probably somewhat important, but like there's so many other things that I think like are missing from that interview process, that, like just, doing a lead code interview alone and maybe a system design like doesn't give you the full picture of like an engineer. And so yeah, for us, like at Consensus, like we made a active decision not to do any leak codes just because we don't really care about leak code skills. So like our interviews are much more practical, where we'll like give you kind of like a toy React application or like an API and kind of like ask you to, make some changes, maybe fix a these kind of things. I think that that's like a much better way to interview people. And I know that like it's not just us that interviews this way. Um, like I think Coinbase tries to ask more practical questions. Stripe, like I think a lot of the non-FANG kind of like more modern startups have been moving away from that lead code model that has dominated like the tech interviewing practice for so long. More specifically on, questions that, like, we ask, I mean, I think without, like, revealing any of the specific questions that we ask, like, some of the things that we, like, care about are, like, what's your passion for, like, working on this technology? Because it is, like, it can be a difficult industry to work in with, like, you know, regulatory challenges, like, there is, like, a lot of, like, unsavory aspects to the industry. Like people may be attracted for the wrong things. People might not care about the industry at all, which like doesn't seem like they would have much staying power. And so like one of the questions I really like to ask people, is just like, what got you into crypto? Like what do you find interesting about it? And another question that like is very important for me in interviewing is like, what do you think about MetaMask? At like, what do you like or dislike about Mask? And you would be surprised at how many people like will interview for a company and not use their products. And it's like, I don't need you to be an expert. I don't care if you tell me like MetaMask is shit and like super janky, the UI sucks, like because then I know at least that you've used it and like you have opinions about it. But if you're like, oh, I've never used MetaMask, that's like almost an instant kind of like
Red flag.
at the interview because it's like, all right, you applied for this company, you're maybe in the second or third round, you're meeting me. I would expect for someone to kind of like take the initiative and like even if we don't necessarily require people to be like deep crypto enthusiasts to hire them, but like if you're not, then like I would still expect you to go in and like use the product and like develop some intuition about the product before, like you join the
Mm.
company or during the interview process.
Yeah, right. So basically, you're more relying to, as you said, no practical questions against late code.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, like, like as I said, front end, it'll be like a toy React application, back end, like a toy API. I haven't done a Solidity interview at Consensus ever actually, but I'm pretty sure it's like a small smart contract with like a suite of tests again. It's like, okay, there's maybe a bug here, fix it, add a new function. So it's like very much what you would be doing. And like, probing the thinking process that you would be going through on a day-to-day basis.
Right. Recently, I did a crypto integration, payment integration for one of the clients whose main target audience are people from 40 to 50 years old and plus from Asian countries. And they're using, most of the time, they're using the older version of the mobile app with older tools. And we had so many fucking problems started from the telling them, teaching them how to use it, until the things where a lot of people, despite all of the technological heaviness that we're bringing to help them to like use their MetaMask account inside the Safari browser or Web2 browsers, they still got facing an issues with instant or unexpected anomalies like instant reloads from like from from nowhere basically. And like, what do you think when we will come to the point where actually Web2 browsers will be capable enough to be integrated with Web3 functionalities and features?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, crypto UX on mobile is awful. Um, that as, like, a user myself, like, whenever I'm doing crypto on mobile, I'm like, "This is awful experience." I think, honestly, like, we're kind of there now. It's just that, like, the technology is, like, very on the fringe still. Like, I think things like Privy, Coinbase Smart Wallet, um, these kind of tools are, like, what is going to, like, take crypto UX, especially, like, mobile and, like, for non-degen on like the normie crowd and not like the super into crypto crowd, like that's what it's gonna be. People are used to downloading browser extensions and having to like switch between, your web browser and a mobile app to sign transactions. Like it needs to be a fully integrated experience. And that's what I think things like Privy and Coinbase Smart Wallet offer, where it's like you log in with like a social account, like your Twitter account or your Gmail, or like with a passkey, like a Face ID. Um, and then you're just able to transact, and the crypto is kind of like pushed into the background. Like you shouldn't need to know what a 24-word seed phrase is or anything like this. I think that for me is the future of crypto UX. And yeah, like I think, the crypto UX that we know it today is going to get less and less common as more and more people join. I mean, I think it's important that we allow people that do have the knowledge to like graduate beyond some of these solutions, because like these solutions like Privy and Coinbase, Smart Wallet, like also have drawbacks. And so, like, I think you start people off with like the basics, keep blockchain in kind of the background behind the scenes where they don't see it. And once, if and when they have enough knowledge that they want to learn more, like they can like export your wallet to your MetaMask, and then you can do transactions directly in your MetaMask, stuff like that.
Mhm. But do you think that we will have that pivotal moment where like Safari or Chrome or any traditional browsers will have the native integration? I mean, that's the biggest problem of the industry right now, right? People want to use it and they don't want like if we're not talking about Gen Z, it's a completely other thing. But like the old money people, let's call them this way, it's super hard for them to get introduced to the crypto, to download wallet, to do all these transitions between the accounts and applications. So if they launch the project and it's not working on Safari, it's a red flag to them.
For sure. For sure. I mean, yeah, that's why I think like, like you can either like accomplish or make that easier in like one of two ways, right? Like you can either like have um crypto functionality like built into like the browser application, or you can have crypto functionality built into like directly built into the website that they're using, right? And so like I don't know if I see like the first ever happening, like Chrome or Safari, like building crypto features directly into their browsers. And so that's why I think like the ability to like sign in with a Gmail or like a social account to like your crypto wallet, and like being able to kind of just bring your crypto wallet like you would bring your like Google account to like whatever website. I think that seems like the easier way to get there without us, because then it's like it's on the web developer who's building the site. It's like, oh, you just have to drop in this SDK that like allows users to kind of like port their Coinbase Smart Wallet account or their Privy account to your application. Um, Whereas in the other way, we kind of have to be like, oh, Google, Apple, whoever, like, please add a crypto wallet to the browser.
Well, that's the biggest problem. And for now, like, at your opinion, well, building this type of infrastructures, or what are your go-to technologies if you have to like build something from scratch?
Um, like full stack crypto application, like any
Yep,
specific kind. Like,
crypto application.
yeah, I mean, TypeScript. I think, WAGMI is probably my favorite. Like WAGMI and VM are my favorite kind of like, crypto interaction libraries at this point. React, obviously, like still a big React fan. Next.js, I mean, it depends. Like, Vercel has a lot of like nice add-ons. And so Vercel is great, but like if you don't care about server-side rendering as much, like Netlify is also decent. And yeah, that's kind of like the front end bits. I mean, everything else like TanStack is great. If you want, super advanced state and, good caching support and all of that kind of stuff. Remix is also pretty good. And so yeah, that's front end. And then back end, I would say my like go-to back end stack these days is Nest.js. Just allows like, really good kind of like setup and has like a lot of sane defaults. And, I think it's also great, especially if the project is going to be like more long term. Like if I was doing a hackathon project, I'd probably just do that. I knew was never going to go anywhere. I'd probably just spin up an Express server and like you don't even need TypeScript and stuff like that. But like if you're building a project for the long term, Nest is good because it enforces you to you know follow some conventions. Um, and yeah, I think like for if and when new developers come onto the project, like Nest has a very standard way of doing things that like it'll be easier for more developers to pick that up.
Have you tried the Supabase as a database?
I have not, but I've heard of it for sure, but I've never used it before. Like I just use Postgres or like SQLite most of the time.
I want to try it. I've heard about it a lot, and I was like, I need some small project at least to try it out, and I wanted to hear your opinion about it. And what do you think? Are there any new technologies in Web3 for the developers that you will definitely suggest them to check it out? Because last time when we were talking about a specific use case, you suggest me to take a look at Pinot Protocol, and it was a know-how for me. I was like, oh wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think the things that I would take a look at now are like the Coinbase Smart Wallet SDK, the Privy SDK, and the third I think would be Zero Dev. I think that's what it's called. Let me just double check.
Oh yeah, zero dev or zero dev. Yeah.
I think that like, the future of crypto UX is like, I don't know if it's going to be any one of those companies, but like that's what it looks like in my opinion. Um, so I think like, using any of those things, especially like Zero Dev and I think maybe Coinbase Smart Wallet are going to force you to learn about like account abstraction, and bundlers and paymasters and all of this, which I mean, I know you, Armin, have a bit of experience now with some of that stuff. Um, but for like other Web3 devs, like I know that it's maybe not integrated in a ton of places right now, but I think if we fast forward 2 years, like a lot of those things are going to be integrated like almost everywhere. And so I think it's good to kind of be ahead of the curve and like learning about that stuff now.
What do you think about other blockchain technologies and their affection to the whole Web3 industry? For example, Solana, which is in a completely other story with their own SDKs and libraries.
For sure. I mean, Solana is huge and you can't ignore Solana either. I think having done very little but some like Solana dev stuff, it's a lot harder than Ethereum. right now. Like the dev tooling isn't nearly as good, and you kind of just have to chew glass a little bit more in Solana. Um, but I think, yeah, like, there's a ton of, you know, uh, Solana focused dev jobs now. And so, like, I think you can either like specialize in like Ethereum and learn account abstraction and all of the stuff that might be on like EVM chains in the next couple of years, or you can also like know a little bit about like Ethereum dev and learn about like Solana front end dev as well, and maybe learn a bit of Rust so that like you are desirable to both like Ethereum or EVM based companies and like SVM based companies. I think a lot of skills are transferable. Obviously the languages are different. Oh, well, at least like Rust versus Solidity is different, but like, at the end of the day, like for all of the web development stuff, like you're gonna need an API, you're gonna need a front end. The libraries are slightly different, but like the paradigms are the same. There's a connect wallet button. You have to trigger a transaction to a user's like wallet, and so I think like a lot of the skills, if you learn one, are transferable to the other.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like infinite learning process for engineers and developers.
Of course, man. Yeah, you gotta be willing for new things all the time. That's the name of the game.
Yeah, especially with AI in the corner.
Yeah, and I mean, like I think AI is great. Like I have been using Cursor a ton. I feel like it allows me to get stuff done fast, like more quickly. It's great for like debugging. It's great for reasoning about code. And so, I think maybe some people are like, "Oh, like AI is gonna take our jobs," and my view is more that like AI is going to allow me to produce 3 times more code than I am today.
Do you think Cursor is much more better than latest version of GPT?
Um, the reason I like Cursor is because it's like integrated into your like IDE, right? So it's like, here's a file, like here's a set of files, like refactor this, or like it's just much more, yeah, integrated into the IDE, into the developer experience, and so I find it more useful for that. Like, I mean, when I first started using AI for coding stuff, like I was dropping snippets to ChatGPT and talking about it, and like refining it that way. But it's just like faster, and like you also have access to all of the latest GPT models, like directly within Cursor. Like you can choose the model that you're conversing with, whether it's Sonnet 3.5 or GPT 4.0 or 3.5. And so I think that's also really cool. I also know that now GitHub is also creating their own answer to some of this stuff. Like they're trying to bring a lot of the like, I think it's mainly GPT models since GitHub's Microsoft now, like much more directly into like the VS Code application. So it'll be interesting to see kind of like, and I think I also heard of one called, maybe it's called Zed or something. That's like another really popular, like integrated like IDE with an AI assistant. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited about the future of like AI software engineering and like making the career more accessible to more people, and also like for the people that are already experienced, like being able to build stuff better, faster.